A very popular essay from Asian American writer Amy Tan. What can we learn from it today? Let's talk about it coming up.
Why would it be father tongue? I mean, I love my mother as much as next to the other guy, but
Yamada.
what about the father?
So this is an essay that someone recommended we check out, and I'm glad we did. I thought it was very interesting. My only regret is I wish I had read this earlier in my life. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of things I wondered. I mean, I grew up pre-internet, right? Like, you didn't really go to the internet to look these things up on the modem unless you went for the AOL dial-up.
Right.
So some of these were questions that I had during high school, and I never had a resource to kind of talk through an empathetic view of it, I guess.
Did I ever tell you the story that when I was younger and I heard another language for the first time, it was over a telephone, and I was baffled to be like, wait a minute, you can speak a different language through the phone?
Okay. Well, I mean, we all have those first moments of exposure. Obviously, some people grow up with it, interestingly enough. So let's talk about...
I think that feels like it's something very defining, especially as a young individual of coming from a family that's multilingual.
So let's step through this today. Amy opens this essay up with talking about her awakening of when she realized that she was using multiple languages, which is already kind of like a dubious positioning because you're like, what do you mean languages? Right? Like, isn't it all just English? And this is getting to that idea of there being like the fluent native way of speaking. And then there's there's a couple different ways to talk about it. Like, I guess ESL might be one way to talk about it. Like the mother doesn't speak it natively, so she might say things grammatically different than a native speaker.
I really wish, like you said, I'd read this earlier, and I wish I would have read it right before the class that I took for my recertification, because that was an ESOL class that I had to take of how to help people that are English second language learners. And that's something that you have to really work towards in the classroom. Is there are different types of English, and there's syntax, and there's regional speech, there's slang, and there is that how you speak on TV, how you speak in the news, at home, how you use academics, and it is very complicated, and it can be very jarring, I think, as a young individual, as Amy points out here.
Yeah, I think that's interesting that there's like a class specifically to it. There's actually even a term. So like not going through the class, but like, you know how like some people will dumb down native like languages when they're speaking to someone they perceive that might not be fluent. So they have to kind of like simplify their language. They call that foreign talk. Did you know that?
No, the class was, pretty PC and correct on everything, and taught it, to, I guess, a higher level of people that would be respectful. But I could see that. One thing that was taught majorly was don't try to, quote, make it foreign, is use your normal language. Obviously, try to use visual aids when using some of those more complex words. Some of those academia words have a picture to go along with it so that they can start associating a visual with that word.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And Amy talks about that in the essay, right? She talks about how her mother was smart, right? Like she was talking with, what was it, the stockbroker? Like she got the idea of what needed to happen. It was this problem of translating thoughts, I guess is one way to put it. Like you aren't, this is a great debate, but you aren't necessarily thinking a language, right? You think something in your brain and it comes out and then gets interpreted into language to try to convey an idea to someone else. And when you don't speak the native language, like you're not proficient in it, there's these breakdowns. And, she points out her mother had these thoughts, like perfectly formed. She's not dumb. She's a perfectly intelligent person, had goals and things to do with stocks, but couldn't convey it externally. Like she has a barrier between her and connecting with another person almost.
And I think that it comes out as slow. So it makes people look like they are inferior or, quote, dumb, because you're not thinking necessarily in a language, but it comes much quicker in something almost like muscle memory. If you're bilingual, but you learned English first and Spanish second, it's going to come to English immediately. And then there's that delay, which makes it look like you're struggling in Spanish, although you may not be. And I know that I've heard from some people that are multilingual that once you start dreaming, or you can speak a sentence with both words, kind of like Spanglish almost, then it becomes so proficient that it doesn't matter that you're, quote, thinking in both languages at the same time. And I think that's hard to master, obviously, as you get older, like, Amy's mom.
Well, have you heard about the critical learning age?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that in the ESOL class, that there is a point where it's nigh impossible to learn a new language as proficient as your primary or first language.
Yeah, like your brain just literally, like the way it forms, the way it processes messages, like literally can't
You can't
change.
rewire it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I did a little bit of research on that. We've talked about that before with Japanese, but to the purpose of this essay, I think one of the points is, this really resonated me when she talks about how she hates the usage of the word uh, broken English. Like, and I think that's true too, because I don't feel comfortable saying broken English because that makes it seem like it's wrong, like it needs to be fixed. And I get it's not grammatically the way native speakers use it, or it might not be, in countries like France where it's regulated how language works, or at least it used to be. I don't know if it still is, but it sounds wrong to call it broken, right? They've got the fully formed thoughts, but the way they transition that into language is not the way a native speaker would. And that, I think that resonated with me as just a person.
It did me as well, because you feel like it's negative, like the person is doing something wrong and they're not. And I think that somebody that is working towards being multilingual, they need to be praised for that, because it is a very difficult skill, especially learning it as an older person. But you're trying to reprogram your brain. And if anybody in their life has tried to do something new later in life, that, maybe you have children and they pick up something really easy, technology, for example, and you're struggling with it, imagine trying to be immersed in a culture that everything you're doing seems wrong or broken. Why would you want to continue learning something like that when everything is reinforced negatively? That would be a struggle for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think language influences our way of thought, right? Like in terms of there's the old debate of a colored person versus, now we say person of color, right? Like does the adjective or the noun come first? And I think it does matter the order and the way that we phrase certain things.
And not only does the phrasing matter, right? You also have context, which is huge, and something that is very difficult in English specifically, because our language is one of the most difficult. We have would. If I'm saying that without very little context as a, non-native speaker of English, you're going to struggle with that word. What do you mean? And then you have the placement of the words, like you said. If you're going from English to Spanish or Spanish to English, the adjectives go in different spots. That's a real hard skill to unlearn and then relearn something new that you've been taught your entire life, because in your brain it doesn't make sense. And I think that something that I kind of thought of this to help me relate is the American way of, Fahrenheit and yards to metric. My brain can't do it, because this is how much a yard is. This is how much miles per hour are. I have no clue what a kilogram is. It's pounds for me.
Well, and we're focusing a lot on the mechanics too, right? There is more to what language conveys beyond just structure. There's that part in this essay where she talks about how when, she was dealing with the stock brokerage or what I think it was, and like the man came out to talk to her, like Amy Tan, and the mother thought that they were being unempathetic, like they were being, I guess, rude. It might be one way to put it. I don't know. But the way it was phrased, Amy's like, no, they weren't being unempathetic at all. And I think it's kind of like, it's beyond just the mechanical side of things. You lose some emotion sometimes based on how well you can navigate within a language, because word selection can be critical for the way in which you convey your emotions about a subject too.
Yeah, and I think that's, for my interpretation of, I think the main purpose of the article was that there is no, quote, right type of English, and she uses the word Englishes, and I love that multiple times throughout the text, that, to say that this is the only way to speak and this is the only way that you can get your message across, I think is inappropriate. And sometimes, we have misconceived notions of what people are trying to say, and, oh, you have to use that broken or watered down English, so obviously you're not going to be able to communicate with me, and that's just rude. And I think that's to me, that was the major point that she's trying to get across, is you don't have to be like everybody else to still convey how you feel.
And I think courtesy is a universal truth, right? Like I had second gen friends, and when you talk to their parents, one I was 3 doors down from me, and I particularly could not understand the mom very well at all. And she talks about how she can understand her mom perfectly, but her friends sometimes have struggled, right? I experienced that with a friend, and I felt just like looking at it selfishly, I felt embarrassed when I had to like keep like asking her to repeat because I didn't understand, or if like, my friend had to translate. Like I knew the mom meant to try to communicate and she was doing her best. And I wasn't like looking down on her, but I did feel like this hesitation of engaging with her because I was always nervous I wouldn't understand her. And I didn't want her to feel bad. And I felt bad being like, I'm sorry, can you say that again? Like, because I knew that's probably something that she's constantly struggling with in the United States.
It costs nothing to be nice to people. And I tell my students this all the time, that we're working with students that are coming from a different country, of how difficult it would be. And I I want them to know that I feel stupid not being able to understand them. Be like, I should be able to do this, and I can't. And I want them to know I'm trying. I'm trying to pronounce things the correct way, because there's that into it, as well as like the enunciation. And sometimes if you go to certain regions of the country, right, some people talk faster, some people talk slower. There's pauses in
Mm,
language. My wife and I
yeah.
were just talking about that the other night, of, when you have a pause, does that mean you're thinking, or does it mean that you're done speaking? Then you have, micro cues from people's, faces and hand gestures, because some languages use a lot of hand movements and some don't. Um, but I love this little story of, I think, Amy trying to say that you just be you and you do what you think is best, and we should all accept each other.
Yeah. And have you ever seen like one of those maps of like, well, over here we say bucket, but over here we say pail, and over here we say soda,
Oh,
over here we say pop, and down here we actually just say Coke. Like it's kind of
no pop,
interesting.
no
Yeah.
pop.
So I think it's to your point. We do kind of develop our own way of using language. And even like I remember reading a paper on how like in Pittsburgh, there's a heavy like Germanic influence. So like instead of rubber bands, they're called gummy bands there. And like there's like these small little differences like that that'll like kind of like reveal truths or reveal culture and pass to us in the language. Like I said earlier, like language informs us. And I think one of the more powerful parts of this was something that I could relate to. Cause like I said, when I went to high school, it was pre-internet days. And I always wondered, I'm always like, why is it that the Asian American children were always like top of the class when it came to math? In my school, the Asian kids were always number one, number two, number three when it came to like the math skills. And it was really interesting the way she talks, Amy Tan, about her experience and how she was like pushed towards the maths because English was like kind of like a no, no, it was a different challenge for her experience for her as Asian American as opposed to like a Native American speaker, I guess.
For me, this essay was very empowering, I think, for Amy to write it. That's the vibe that I got, that she was saying, you know what? I don't care what anybody thinks of this essay. I am a writer. And I don't care if everybody bashes it. I don't care if nobody reads it. Uh, I want people to understand my personal struggles, and I want to get this down on paper. So if it can help one person feel better about themselves and not be pushed into something because, oh, English is your second language, or you're this, you can't do it. And she's saying, no, you chase your dreams, you can do it. And I love that about this essay.
We did not write the Joy Luck Club, that is for sure. So I would say highly positive experience reading this. My only regret, like I said earlier, is that I never read this when I was in high school. I wish I had read this at a younger age, because I think to the point of what literature can do is it provides a perspective different from my own. And I think that's really invaluable.
I agree, but I disagree too. I agree. I wish I had read it earlier as well, as I stated. However, I think it would have fallen on deaf ears, pun intended,
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, one of my
as a younger
really,
crypto for me.
for sure, one of my closest friends was Asian American, and her parents pushed her so hard to like do like piano, and I think she was salutatorian, maybe valedictorian, I can't quite remember. And she was pushed really hard, like, And I never got a glimpse into some of these things that Amy Tan was able to bring out for me. So I don't know. I think maybe it resonates with me too, just because I did have that close friend that was Asian American in high school.
So that specific story compared to the generalization a lot of times people have of different groups of people with backgrounds of knowledge of language. I could see that.
We're going to leave a playlist of Amy Tan talks below. We post videos every Monday and Thursday. If you'd like to join us on those discussions, make sure you hit that subscribe button to join us. Una out.
Peace.